hey guys, it's Jess. And this is my first video that I'm making since I released the big full mock 6-hour training that I just wanted to give you guys. And I'm overwhelmed by the amount of gratitude messages that I got from you. So I just want to start off by saying I super appreciate that. Every time you write a comment on the video, it really just makes me feel fulfilled. It reinforces my behavior of posting new videos and really just is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Every one of you who watches my videos and says it helped you pass, you are the reason that I make these videos. So thank you so much for reaching out to me. Now, I got an overwhelming amount of people from that video that reached out about the course I was talking about making in that video, the Deep Dive 5. So it is a very different kind of course than every other course available out there. It is very, very detailed, and it really focuses on application in addition to content. There's actually more time spent on application than there is on content. So I got tons and tons of people who were asking for it. And I said, okay, you know what? You don't need me to finish the course to start using it. You just need something up there, right? Something to look at every day. So I actually decided this morning to officially release the course in pre-sales. So what does that mean? That means you can get the course at a very significantly discounted price, and you'll have access to the course as I'm building it. So as of today, the date when I'm making this video, there's about 8 to 10 hours worth of content on there, and I'm posting new content every day, Sunday through Friday. So you'll always have something to look at. And then once the course is done, it'll go up to the regular price. I also did start my coaching cohort. We meet Monday through Friday for 1 hour a day. You're meeting with me, and I'll be teaching live, answering any questions you have. And if you are to get the pre-sale of the course, that is only $29 a month. If you wanted to just do the live cohort, you can actually also do that for $39 a month. But I encourage you to check out that course because it is, I'm not even going to say what the price is on here because it's so low. I don't want to upset people who are buying it later at the full price. I'm really giving you a very, very significant discount because it's a big ask, right? To say, hey, buy this course, it's not even done yet. But there's a lot of great content on there. And I'd rather than just telling you about why the course is so different, I wanted to just show you. So I'm actually going to be releasing a video from one of the courses that's already done. This is G-18 on group contingencies. Now, why am I showing you this video? This is number one, probably the most overlooked section of the entire exam. Because it's group contingencies, it's super easy, right? There's independent, interdependent, dependent. You find out what they are and you think you're done. In fact, you could tell a 7-year-old what they are and then ask them an hour later and they'll remember. It's really not that hard to memorize the content. The difference is applying the content. So what makes this course different is rather than just telling you what these things are like all the other courses do, I show you how to recognize them in mock questions, and then I show you how to figure out which one to use if they're giving you a scenario and asking you which one to use. Now, you're not getting that, unfortunately, with this video, but you will get if you get the course. I also do have a ton of mock questions that go with this section and built into the course, where after I'm demoing how to answer a few, you'll actually get to practice answering a few. And we just went over that yesterday in my cohort. So we'll go over that again if you do decide to join. But anyway, I wanted you to just have this video. This is probably the only video I'm going to release from the course, but you can see what makes it so different. I do have the link to it below if you want to get it. And I also have it on my website, hopeeducationservices.com. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope to see you in my cohort soon. Okay, guys, so this is G-18, and we're going to talk about using group contingencies. The group contingencies, they're really easy to understand, right? So everybody can very simply, once someone tells you what they are, you know what they are. And they're also easy to recognize. But what they are difficult is trying to figure out in a scenario question when you're on the exam, when they're asking you which one should you use. So we're going to actually focus on that in this video. I want to make sure that when you're done with this video, you don't just know what they are, because it may not help you on the exam. You actually know how to choose which group contingency makes the most sense. Remember, on your exam, the whole purpose of the exam is to make sure you can be a BCBA. So they want to see that in given a situation, you know what you're supposed to do, not so much that you know the answers or definitions of things. So let's first look at what the group contingencies are. I'm going to go through all of them, give you examples of them. I'll give you a mock question while I'm teaching you about that particular contingency, just so you can recognize it. And then in the end, we're going to do three different mock questions, and they'll be out of order. and you'll see if you can actually apply the information. Okay, so what are our types of group contingencies? Independent, dependent, and interdependent. So I do want to make clear that a group contingency means that there's a way for the group to get the reinforcer. Now, there are different ways, and those are the 3 different types of group contingencies, but we're going to go through that. A contest is not a group contingency. So oftentimes when I'm doing coaching, I'll ask people to give me examples because I really want to know you understand it. And someone will say, oh, well, we went to trivia and whoever had the highest score will win the prize. That's not a group contingency, or the students in the classroom had a spelling bee and whoever spelled the words the most correct, that's, got a prize. That's not a group contingency. A group contingency means that somehow, some way, everyone in the group has a way to get the reinforcer. So let's look at what those ways are. Okay, so let's look at the first type of group contingency, and that's an independent group contingency. This is every man for himself. Everyone has a chance to earn the reinforcer, and only you determine if you earn it. This is very simple. It's very straightforward. So there's a criteria that is set in order to get the reinforcer. Let's say it is for in a school. If you turn in your homework 5 days in a row, you get the reinforcer. Let's say it's a free homework pass for next week. Everyone has a chance to get their free homework pass, and everyone's behavior is only dependent upon their behavior. So it doesn't matter what, if Sally turns in her homework for 5 days, she gets the homework pass. It doesn't matter what John does or what Joe does or what Caleb does. Everything is just dependent on yourself. This is the independent group contingency. So an example of this, a teacher is having a problem with many members of the class not turning in their homework. She tells the class that whoever turns in their homework will get an extra 10 minutes of recess. That is your independent group contingency. So if you have to try to get a mock question and you want to try to recognize which one it is, this is an example of a mock question where an independent group contingency would be the answer. Jeff is part of a sales team. Anyone on the team who meets their quota gets a bonus. What type of group contingency is this? Okay, guys, so again, like I said, it's easy to understand what these actually mean, but when to apply them becomes what's challenging. Now, there are no lists of, these are the advantages and disadvantages of each one of these contingencies. And there's no clear-cut set of rules of when you see this keyword, this is your answer. When you see that keyword, this is your answer. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the good parts and the bad parts about an independent group contingency. That way, if you see a question on your exam where it's asking you which one you would use, you'd have an idea. So an independent group contingency, one of the strengths of that is that it allows everyone to earn the reinforcer. So one of the problems when someone else's behavior determines if you earn the reinforcer or not is if you don't earn the reinforcer, and then that happens consistently, you might lose motivation to engage in the behavior. So that is one of the problems that's caused by an independent group contingency. Now, on the other side, if the reinforcer itself is not enough to motivate you to engage in the behavior because the response effort's too high, or maybe really a person even just lacks the skills to do it independently, then an independent group contingency might not work. So those are the 2 things to keep in mind when you're looking at an independent group contingency and choosing whether or not that one makes sense as your answer. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the dependent group contingency. This is the Heward procedure. And this is when an entire group is rewarded based upon the behavior of one or a few people. So you have, let's say in a class, 1 or 2 students who is maybe struggling with something. The teacher says, okay, if those 2 students can do it, then the whole class will be rewarded. So everyone in the group gets access to the reinforcer, but via these 2 people. And that's nicknamed the Heward procedure. Now, I can give you an example of this, and then we'll talk about it. Here it says, Jane frequently doesn't turn in her homework. Her teacher recognizes that she has a great relationship with her peers and values what they think of her. She tells the entire class that if Jane completes her homework, the entire class will get an extra 10 minutes of recess. Her friends rally around her to help her complete her homework. So that is what An example is, we'll give you one more so you can pick this out. Again, we're using the same, kind of the same examples in each one, and we're modifying it so you can see how each one, each group contingency would work in a scenario. So this one, Jeff is part of a sales team. If Jeff meets his quota, the entire sales team gets a bonus. What type of group contingency is this? This is what a question will look like if it's asking you to identify a dependent group contingency. Again, though, I think it's more likely, I don't know, but it's more likely, I think, that you're going to have to pick out which contingency to use than just identifying it. It would be great if you get a question on just identifying it, because it's easy to learn that. So how and when would dependent group contingencies make sense? You know, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? Again, there's no black and white answer, but dependent group contingencies, they work well if someone is motivated by their peers. And like in this example that I gave here, her peers care, she cares what her peers think of her, right? If she didn't care what her peers thought of her, then that could be a problem. Now, a dependent group contingency can also be very problematic in a classroom, because if the hero doesn't actually meet their quota, their peers aren't going to get their reinforcer, and then they can cause problematic relationships, right? The other problem with the dependent group contingency is, like I said, is it can actually cause other people in the group to stop engaging in the behavior, since they're not accessing a reinforcer even when they were doing their work, right? So maybe they are not being rewarded, so therefore their behavior is not actually contacting reinforcement, but it's not because of what they did, it's because of what another person did. So I tend to not like dependent group contingencies. I personally have never used one. I probably wouldn't, but you do need to know what it is for your test. But the whole point of why we would have this in there is that the idea is that if you kind of tie other people's reinforcement into this one person or two or three people's behavior, then the group will rally around them to support them to make sure they're hitting their goal. And that's great in theory. I don't know that that works in real life, but on your exam, that's what you would be looking for. So the final form of a group contingency is the interdependent group contingency. This is where everyone in the group must meet the contingency for the entire group to be rewarded. If any one person does not meet the contingency, then nobody in the group is rewarded. So in my opinion, this is a little bit better than in the Hero procedure. It does have some of the same drawbacks and some of the same benefits, right? So you're enlisting everybody's support, everyone's working together. And then, when you also though do have that drawback that you could do whatever you did, the behavior you were required to do to get the reinforcer, and then you don't get reinforced for it, that can hurt one individual in the group. So the question becomes really, when you're looking at the dependent group contingencies versus the interdependent group contingencies, where are you going to differentiate in terms of the mock questions? There, it's really going to say something, because again, the drawbacks and the benefits are very similar. If you're looking at dependent group contingency as the answer, then it's going to say very clearly that there's one person or two people, but it can still say that and you can still get tripped up. So if there's any indication that the teacher has already tried using another procedure that didn't work, or the teacher's already tried reinforcing and punishing one or two individuals and that didn't work, then interdependent group contingency is what you're going to go for. And I'm going to show you some mock questions. I will give you the examples of this and how to identify this in a question. I didn't forget. Then we're going to look at some mock questions and we're going to apply this, because again, I promised you in this course that this is going to be different than other courses. This is not a course where you're just going to get materials and you're going to memorize. We're going to apply it, because that's what you need to do in your exam. And I truly believe that 99% of people who do not pass the exam and come back to me and say, like, I know all the content, and this is before this course, because I think the number of people who pass are going to go up now from this course, but they're saying, I understand, I know all this content. I'm saying, yes, you know it, but no one's taught you how to apply it. So let's look at these examples. Same situation. The interdependent group contingency is a teacher tells a class that if every student turns in their homework, the entire class will get an extra 10 minutes of recess. If even one person doesn't turn in their homework, nobody will get extra recess. And then how to pick it out of the sales one. Jeff is part of a sales team. If everyone on the sales team meets their quota, the entire team gets a bonus. And that is an interdependent, or excuse me, they are interdependent. All right, so now we're gonna look at our mock questions and we're gonna apply this information. And I'll help you understand what to look for in the question and then why the answers that are not correct are the wrong answers. Valerie is a BCBA consulting with Ashley in a classroom. Ashley is struggling with 2 students cleaning their trays after lunch every day. She has already tried giving them stickers if they put their tray away and removing 5 minutes of recess time if they don't, but it didn't work. What should Valerie try next? All right, so here is a question where, and I started to talk about this earlier, and I actually thought this was a little leader in our questions, but we have 2 students, right? So right away, when we're thinking 2 students, your brain is going to immediately go to dependent group contingency, right? Because the belief is when it's highlighting 2 students, we're going to talk about dependent group contingency. So you think this is a keyword for this. That is a trick. Okay, it can be a keyword for that. In this case, though, it is not the answer. You could not use a dependent group contingency here. And a rule-based group contingency is not the answer because that's not a real thing. So that we're going to just cross off. So why is this not a dependent group contingency if we have 2 people? And why are we not talking about a hero procedure? What it says in this question is that the teacher has already tried giving them stickers, which is reinforcement, right? And removing recess, which is punishment. So the teacher has already tried essentially an independent group contingency. That's what, or some sort of contingency that we don't have enough information to know it was an independent group contingency because we don't know whether the other students had the same contingency. So we don't know there was an independent group contingency, but we know that they had already some sort of contingency where their behavior only depended upon their behavior. So, and that didn't work. So that's not going to be our answer because we've already tried where their behavior is just dependent upon themselves. And this is where I say it gets confusing as to whether you're looking for an interdependent or dependent. In this question, what you want to think about is, would it be enough for the whole group to be reliant on them? If the teacher's already tried punishment, she's already tried reinforcement, that didn't work, it's probably not a good idea to then take an entire group and make the group's ability to access reinforcement depending upon these 2 people who are really struggling in this area. That's probably not going to be an additional motivation, enough of an additional motivation in order to get them to do what they need to do. So what do? You bring the whole group into it. So you make it an interdependent group contingency where the entire group has to clean up their trays. With an interdependent group contingency, people are going to get more involved, right? The students in general will probably get more involved in helping their peer. And then also the other people in the group you will not have to solely really rely on them. They still do have to do it for the whole group to be rewarded, but it's not in this sense that the entire group is dependent upon something that they're obviously struggling with and that they've already not responded to in terms of reinforcement and punishment. So if you get a question like this, it's not that easy to apply this stuff. So I really do hope that this helped. Because like I said, you can easily memorize this stuff. And it just would take, 90 seconds or less to understand what the 3 of these things are. But applying them is where people get tripped up. So people often will overlook this section, studying this section, and then get these questions wrong on their exam. All right, so let's look at the next one here. Ellen is a BCBA working with Jaylene. Jaylene is struggling with remembering to turn in her homework. Her teacher tried motivating her with stickers and even a homework pass, but they have not worked. Jaylene's strongest reinforcer is attention from her peers. She has a fantastic relationship with most of the children in her class, and her teacher states she's a natural leader. What group contingency should Ellen recommend? A, independent group contingency. B, interdependent group contingency. C, dependent group contingency. And D, rule-based group contingency. The first thing we're going to do is cross off the obviously wrong answers. So the first obviously wrong answer is going to be rule-based because that's not a thing. So then which one can we cross off next? Well, it says here that the teachers already tried motivating her with stickers and a homework pass, right? And that didn't work. So we've already tried some sort of contingency where her behavior is only dependent on her behavior. So again, we don't know that was an independent group contingency because we don't know if the other students had ability to earn a stickers and homework pass. It only would be a group contingency if everyone had the same chance. But we already know that she didn't respond to that. So now we're choosing between interdependent and dependent again. And so what are we looking for now in terms of our keywords that weren't in the last one? It says here her strongest relationship is attention from her peers. So she really values what her peers think, right? She has a great relationship with them. She's a natural leader according to her teacher. Here, we're looking at C, the dependent group contingency. Here, the reason why we're going to go with dependent group contingency is because it's clearly saying in this question, or at least it's trying to say in this question, that she's motivated by what her peers think. So that way, if her peers are dependent upon her to get reinforcement, she's very likely for that to be very motivating for her and motivate her enough to do the behavior. Caleb is part of a very competitive sales team. The supervisor intentionally wants to create a culture of competition. Each member of the team is working from home and rarely interacts with each other. However, there are leaderboards that the whole team can see that reflect sales. Each member of the team works off of commission, and the supervisor has found that the competition has boosted everyone's sales. He wants to introduce a bonus this month using a group contingency. Which group contingency should he use? A, independent group contingency. B, interdependent group contingency. C, dependent group contingency. D, rule-based group contingency. This does not sound like a lovely place to work. I'm glad I don't work in this environment, but let's answer the question anyway. So the first thing you're going to do every single time you get a question on all 180 questions, 85 questions on your exam, the first thing you're going to do is cross off whatever you immediately know is not the answer. So again, we're going to do that. So here, we're looking at this question. It's saying that each member rarely interacts with each other. They're working from home, right? They're leaderboards. They want competition. They work off of commission. So here it's just very clearly talking about, right, an independent group contingency. This one part alone right here, where it talks about just that each member of the team is working from home and rarely interacts with each other, that's going to rule out the interdependent and dependent right there. So that alone is going to be just, yes, independence the answer. So that one was a little bit easier than the other two. It's usually easier to identify when something should be independent than when to pick apart between the difference between interdependent and dependent. And again, I did intentionally show you today that if you see one or two people, that is not necessarily an indication you can choose dependent as the answer. So this is G-18. Hope this has been helpful.